will be 15,000 satellites above us in low Earth orbit, giving us a blanket of 5G networking. And so this is going to keep going. There is no end to this. What could possibly go wrong? So the backdrop of all of this is, frankly, we're out of people. And this is something that gets talked about, with enough frequency that I don't need to beat that horse. But the effect of that, the fact that information security folks are in short supply, extremely expensive, and hard to retain. They know they can change their job every 6 months and go double their salary, so they do. So here's the venture capital community, and man, they know there's money to be made here. So hey, if you got a 3-slide PowerPoint deck that you can take to venture capitalists, you can sell your idea for your new magic technology, because man, security tools are going to bring big bucks, man, big returns to the investors. This is what is driving a lot of the way that we view security. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So what does RSA say about this? We got too many damn tools out there. You guys need to roll up your sleeves and get to work and quit shopping for tools. So here's average, some of these are 50 to 60, different applications, tool sets, things that we're using to manage security. The thing has exploded. So think about it. We're buying these tools in order to create, these efficiencies and automation and things. And I'll come back to this automation topic. And what we're having to do is throw tons of people at it to manage all of this stuff. So did you achieve the outcome you were looking for? No. So we buy a bunch of tools. That's how we do these things. And so, but luckily, you are probably not the target of an advanced persistent threat nation state actor. It's highly unlikely. It is more likely that your users trip over the background noise of the internet. Okay, so see this plot here on the right? This is what happens when you throw a server out facing the internet with an open port 22, an SSH server. The password guessing will start within a minute. No joke, try it yourself. It's the background noise of the internet. This stuff is always going around there. There are 200,000 sites every day that are compromised and turned into booby traps. The frequency with which you use the internet, or with which your users use the internet, that frequency has everything to do with the rate of compromised assets you're going to have on your network. Okay, the internet exists from a consumer perspective for 3 things: to sell you things, to steal from you, or to manipulate your opinion, and that's it. Okay, that background noise of the internet, everybody is out there trying to steal from you. They're looking for problems in your websites. They're trying to hassle your users. They're trying to collect credentials. All this is going on. That's not personal. That's not targeted. That's not an attack. That's tripping over the background noise. So let's just be real clear about what the problem really is. Okay, now I have briefed senators, governors, generals, lots of mayors, and when I do that, you cannot talk about scary Russian cyber buffer overflow, SQL injection being a problem. You need to wrap your head around financial impacts and dollar amounts of liability, because it makes for a much better conversation, okay? So here are 3 things that go wrong, and I would challenge anybody here to think of something that doesn't really fit into one of these buckets. It probably exists, but this is a pretty fair characterization of the things that actually go wrong. So let's not talk about SQL injection. Let's talk about records disclosure, right? In the United States, we have a pretty good idea what this costs. Larry Poneman, who was the president of a company I worked for a long time ago, so I know the dude pretty well. The Poneman Institute knows, through examining the aftermath of some of these record breaches, what it costs to clean up. So $150 a record. If you're in the health sector, it's closer to $400 a record. Okay, we have 1 million customer records in a database. That is potentially $200 million in liability. That's the way to have that conversation. Theft, I know that in our region, and we're here in Western Washington and the Pacific Northwest, just in our neighborhood here, it's gone from $75,000, and there was Leavenworth Hospital 1.2 million. So theft, I would also lump in its buddy extortion, right? We say ransomware. Ransomware is a dumb name. It's extortion, right? Identity theft, dumb name. It's financial fraud. So theft and extortion is probably going to be worth about what your routine wire transfer looks like, or a request for you to buy gift cards for the CEO, using finger quotes, in an amount that will probably fly under the radar, right? That's where your liability is there. And then there's disruption, right? So disruption can be cause inability for you to run your business at all. Or if your business is providing clean water or 911 or a hospital call center, people could die. These are the outcomes to avoid. Assigning a financial impact to loss of life is a little tough. There are organizations that know what that's worth, FEMA being one, Boeing probably being another, because they have to know, what it's worth to insure planes just in case they go down. But these are the outcomes to avoid, and this is what they cost. Now, this is important to think about it this way, because when you have a discussion about risk, there's a term in the risk expression that is impact. So let's just keep that in mind. Okay, so here's all the stuff trying to make those outcomes happen. Okay, ransomware, well, that's extortion. All right, ransomware is starting to lock up everything. We have seen some very, very interesting customer events, not the least of which is we had a little incident with some jerky bagging robots that maybe I'll dive into a little bit later. Ransomware has become an epidemic. We all know this. Business email compromise. Business email compromise works because people can be fooled. There is not, and there never will be, a firewall for stupid. Sadly, that means we have to rely on the final control between people's ears. And when the CEO, in finger quotes, sends an email from his or her Yahoo account, and somebody says, okay, I'll go ahead and wire that for you, or I'll go ahead and buy those gift cards and send you the serial numbers, man, that is a self-inflicted wound, So, and it's not limited to small, medium business or the mid-market. Right here, Google and Facebook, $123 million. So this is epidemic as well. Why? Because it works and it's easy to monetize. All you have to do is fool somebody and you get paid. Okay, this is data from Microsoft. Microsoft knows when Office 365 gets an email message for someone and it's got a link in it, and that link points to a site that looks just like a Microsoft login site. Okay, well, that's phishing site. They're trying to get your credentials. Interestingly, look at the inverse correlation between the rise in phishing sites and the drop in malware sites. This is a trend that tells you something, and it helps you prepare. It helps you focus on what's important. So if the trend is all around credentials, that's the thing where we should probably spend some time, right? Okay, credential stuffing. Okay, so credential stuffing, if you have 500 users and I pick a password, let's call it Dakota, and I try every one of those 500 users with that password. None of them worked. Now I'm going to try the next word in the dictionary, and I'll start at the beginning again and go through all 500. Well, if I do it that way, nobody ever gets locked out, and that doesn't hit the radar. That's called credential stuffing, and that's also epidemic. So again, phishing, credential stuffing, this is all about passwords. Passwords turn out to be the easiest way to walk into a network. I don't have to hack your website. I don't have to send in a piece of malware and do a buffer overflow. All I got to do is fool you into giving me your password, and I'm going to walk right in. This is what's happening. Crypto mining. This is interesting. So quick story on this. We actually saw some strange activity at one of the customers that we monitor, right? Our business, we kick the bad guys out of computer networks. So as we monitor our customers, we see odd things happening. We investigate those, and we have the ability to confirm that with a packet capture and just replay something. This one was really weird. This was cryptocurrency mining going on in a customer's VoIP phone system. So nothing is immune from this. So this is low risk because all it's doing is, and this would fall into the theft category. It's theft because I'm stealing your CPU time from you. There are existing networks of compromised computers out there that can be used for this. And frankly, now there are websites that say, hey, if you want to go ad-free, just let us use your CPU while we're on this site. And they will mine cryptocurrency. So it's becoming somewhat legitimized there. And it's considered by the criminal community to be somewhat more ethical than ransomware. It's hard to see how this could end up in loss of life, whereas ransomware, locking up a hospital, pretty clear what's going to happen there. So cryptocurrency mining is also somewhat epidemic. I would say that this one, if you watch this trend, it is very dependent on not only the price of cryptocurrency, but the price of power. We can throw a bunch of computers into a data center and we can have them hum all day long and finally spit out a crypto coin. And that's okay if power is cheap. But when power gets expensive, it's cheaper for me, a criminal, to use your CPU than to just go buy CPU in a data center. So this is also being done as a service, as is many things. So you don't even really need any technical skills anymore to set up an operation doing this, as well as a variety of other illegal activities. So IoT stuff, this Mirai botnet. We just deploy stuff. It's not secured. It gets taken over immediately, and it's used for all kinds of stuff. We've seen it used for credential stuffing. We've seen it used for distributed denial of service. We don't know what the ultimate use for this gigantic network of compromised IoT really is. It can be used for a lot of things, and so far it's fairly benign, blowing stuff off the internet. That's irritating, but it's not disastrous. F5 is the best company that I've seen that's tracking this kind of thing. The F5 blogs are really interesting to read as they're watching all this take place. Okay, and here's exactly what distributed denial of service looks like. 1.7 terabits per second. Nobody can survive that. So interestingly, this is probably going to be used as more of a weaponized tool in the future. It's an irritant today, but again, all that stuff is lurking out there, and it can all be pointed as a single cannon at something, that they want to disappear from the internet, and it will disappear from the internet for that period. I'm not sure any company can absorb that kind of traffic. Okay, and there's all kinds of other stuff going on. Just briefly, I will mention this. Even if you are attending to your own security very well, the prospect of becoming collateral damage for a nation state action is just going up. Everybody remembers the WannaCry and the NotPetya global ransomware attacks. Neither one of those was really criminal. North Korea did the first one, Russia did the second one. Interestingly, it was Russia poking the economy of Ukraine through a tax preparation software company, and everybody that even peripherally had anything to do with that company went down. Merck, the drug manufacturer, Maersk, the shipper, collateral damage extended around the corner from our office in Seattle. There's a company called Nuance that does medical transcription. They went down. That means every hospital had to fall back to pencil and paper to transcribe doctor notes. And we all know how doctors write. So, the collateral damage from that ended up being in the billions. Companies that were not even the target. The nation state target was Ukraine. The way it was done affected everybody, and this will be coming back. So, yeah, hardware vulnerabilities, stuff you will never be able to fix. That's fun. Third parties, there's a big trend around third-party security. Everybody has to see everybody else's papers. We could go on and on and on talking about the bad things that are happening out there, but let's not dwell on that. I will make a couple of predictions, though. All these things are going to happen. And we could have more of these, but I do want to say this. Gartner has said in particular, this automation with human oversight is going to become prevalent. And in a bit here, I'm going to go through the logic around the mathematics of risk. We're not going to get really deeply into mathematics, but I do want to talk about how to handle risk. I do think as well, this business about security being a competitive differentiator. This was actually a paper I wrote when I was the managing consultant for VeriSign's global security consulting. And it's about almost 20, wow, more than 15 years ago, let's just say that. And when we get to a point where companies are holding up their hands saying, buy from us, because we're more secure than our competitor, we're going to turn a very interesting corner there. When security becomes a market force rather than a bolt-on to all the crap we buy, we're going to start ending up in a good place, a better place. And right now, the trend towards third-party security is pushing this forward. So just quick examples. Health and Human Services adjudicates HIPAA. They say that if you have any business with a covered entity, if you sell urinal cakes to a hospital, you can be audited against HIPAA yourself. And that's us, right? We're a business associate to a lot of covered entities, and so our security has really got to be straight. Let's see, the Office of Comptroller of the Currency, they're the ones that set regulatory requirements for the finance sector. And the FFIEC is the audit arm there. The FFIEC now in their examinations, and I believe this is extending to NCUA for credit unions as well, they say, when we come to examine you, you need to show us not only evidence of your third-party security management program, but demonstrate its effectiveness. How do you do that? Another one is the Department of Defense. Department of Defense says if you are a contractor to the Department of Defense, and this includes trucking companies and construction companies, if you're a contractor to the DoD, you need to assess against NIST 800-171 and prepare your corrective action plan and be able to show your papers, or you will no longer be a contractor to the Department of Defense. All of that third-party stuff is turning this into an economy where everybody has to show everybody else their security papers, and that is what is pushing forward security as a competitive differentiator and market force. That is a good thing. So that, I don't think, is a crazy prediction. I think everybody can get behind that. Okay, all right. So there's all this stuff going on, and this is only, scratching the surface of what's going on. So what do we do about this? Way back in the 20th century, we used to say, keep the bad guys out of the computer network, right? And I remember a long time ago that the question you would always get asked, are we secure? Okay, the answer is always no. And in a second, I'm going to prove that. Today, we say, manage the risk of this event that we know is coming to our doorstep, right? Be prepared. Assume that this is going to happen and manage the risk. All right, this is the way the lexicon has changed. It has everything to do with information security now being so important, largely because of regulatory requirements and fines that are astronomical. But now this is a topic in boardrooms and C-suites and things like that. And what the business understands is managing risk. Your business knows right now there is a finite risk of you being hit by an asteroid. They planned for that, right? So that's just business risk. Okay, so here's the mathematics of risk. And this is just the simplest expression there is. I've seen papers written, paper by Sun Microsystems that had all kinds of calculus in it to do. No, you don't need that. There are two terms in the risk expression. Number one, the likelihood that a bad thing happens, right? What's that bad thing? It's records disclosure, theft and extortion, or disruption of my critical services. That's the bad thing. What's the likelihood that that happens? And there's a way to go around and find out what the controls are around things like, we're not going to get into that. Just remember, there's two terms here. One is the likelihood of a bad thing happening, and the other is the consequence or the impact of that thing happening. And if you turn it into financial terms, like we did in the beginning, you start to have a discussion around this, right? So I have 1 million records that are worth $200 a piece. That's $200 million in liability. Now we can have a discussion about what controls look like to reduce the likelihood of that happening, but also to reduce the impact of that happening. So let's talk about this. If you want to buy down risk, you can buy down the likelihood of a bad thing happening with preventive controls. And MDS sells all kinds of technology, and everybody on this call probably has pretty much all that stuff in place, right? Because we buy too many tools, right? So firewalls, intrusion prevention, email security, train your employees, do vulnerability management, all those are designed to make bad things not happen. And then there's the impact term. If you want to buy down risk and you focus on that impact term, it's through detection and rapid effective response and recovery. Okay, so here are a few detective controls here, and you probably have some of these on your network, right? Intrusion detection system, right? Snort is the open source one. Cisco SourceFire is the commercial one. There's security information and event management systems. If you're paying for QRadar, I'm sorry for you, but these are formerly, we call these correlation engines. They're enormously expensive. They are extremely noisy. They are always going, look at me, look at me, look at me, better look at me. And typically what happens is people just tune that stuff out so that you start ending with false negatives. But setting that aside, aggregating all your logs in one place, being able to go through those logs and look for events of interest. If you're aggregating, for example, your Active Directory logs, and you start seeing login failures from Brazil, that should probably be brought to your attention at some point, because credential stuffing is a thing, and password misuse is a thing. So looking at logs for your authentication system, probably good. Probably want to put all those in one place. Packet capture, there is no substitute for the ability to answer the question, what happened here, than a packet capture. It just lets you replay something. So it turns out it's a little tricky to handle that kind of thing. Human investigators, we're out of people. We're out of people, but human investigators, somebody needs to receive the alerts and work on this stuff. So here are the two terms of the risk expression. You can buy down the likelihood of a bad event by applying preventive controls. You can buy down the impact of event by good monitoring, detection, response, and recovery. Okay, so really you get to choose. Impact number one. We got a compromised asset on the network, and the help desk cleaned it up right away, and they went back to work. Impact number two, the FBI just called, and all of our customer records are for sale online. You get to choose. You can focus on this impact and make things get cleaned up so fast that it's tree falling in the forest. Unfortunately, this is a gap with just about everybody. So these are some numbers that we have from Larry Ponemon Institute. New report out, 205 days on average until you detect a compromised asset on your network. And I can tell you with a good deal of authority that if that long has gone by, someone has handed you your behind. You have actually lost something of value. A compromised workstation on your network is not a big deal. Records disclosure, theft and extortion, and service disruption, those are the real things you want to avoid. So again, that rapid detection and response turns the impact you don't want into the impact you want. Interestingly, this one just fascinates me. 70% or so of victims are notified by the FBI, Secret Service, or some other third party. Wow, that means you are really not watching not watching. And I think it goes without saying, 90% couldn't comply with regulatory requirements, which is kind of telling. Regulatory requirements are the set of very standard, not simple things, but the very standard set of things that we all need to do, right? It's governance, policy, access control, physical security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the kind of basic infrastructure that you need to have in place to avoid being one of these statistics. So, if you were going to really focus on your response and effective response and recovery, this is what you want to minimize. These are the metrics you want to look at. The time from initial compromise to detection, and then the time it takes to get that asset completely returned to operational status and recovery, right? The sum of those is dwell time. And here is just a figure on how focusing on that impact reduces the overall cost of a security event. So if you're going to do this, and you're going to improve detection and response, here are your options. And there may be more, but as we've thought through this, here's really the list of choices that most organizations have to them. Number one is exactly how most organizations do it. They make it IT's job to handle security events that are coming off the technologies and the messaging and your antivirus and your IPS and your URL filter and your SIM system going, look at me, something's going on, look at me. And IT typically has got to take care of that. Why? Because we're out of people. You can use the service desk. That is actually a very good strategy, because the service desk or your help desk has administrative capability to clean something up over the wire. And that's exactly the kind of rapid response you want. Interns, you can have interns look at logs. When their eyes start to bleed, they go back to school. Or you can outsource it. That's why we are in the business of managed detection and response, because there's not a whole lot of choices here. And let me just point out too, making it IT's job, and I'm a little flip about it, but there's a cost associated with that I don't think we appreciate well enough, and it's the opportunity cost of having IT work on unplanned work. Unplanned work, as studied by the manufacturing industry, is known to cost twice as much as planned work. And frankly, the opportunity cost of having IT do security means that all of those IT transformational projects that are underway, I showed you the smart city, but this is happening in hospitals, this is happening in commercial facilities, it's happening everywhere. All that IT transformation gets sidelined while there's a security problem, and that is a clear opportunity cost. So, we like to think that we've worked through the economics and have a compelling offering, but that would be up to you. So here are your choices, and here's a handy flow chart for you for how to respond, recover. Okay, so what is MDR? Here's what we do. It is a method of monitoring customer networks. We do it in such a way that we pull network flow information off a network, as well as intrusion detection system alerts from an embedded IDS sensor that we have in our detector. The reason we pull NetFlow over is because nobody cares about source address, destination address, port protocol flags, and timestamp. That is very benign metadata. What we leave on customer premise is a full packet capture. And so if 5 million events come out of a customer's network with all of these technologies that everybody has deployed already, firewalls, URL filters, email security, Office 365, MCAS alerts, all of these things, 5 million come over, 20 to 50 tickets come out after we apply analytics to that, because not everything that security technologies are trying to tell you is really worth investigating. So we'll investigate, and our analysts are very good. They've gotten to know our customers very well. This is a relationship business more than anything else. And they say, yeah, seen this. This is nothing. We told them about this. Whoa, what's that? When they get to a whoa, what's that? They can give a command from their investigation tools that will reach back onto customer premise and have the device send a slice of the packet capture that bounds the incident that's being investigated. And in that way, they can replay it. There's the web page, the ad, the mouse click, the malware, command and control communications. Okay, time to drop into response mode. And we have pre-designed incident response that we integrate with our customers, and we get the help desk to clean the thing up over the wire, and it's tree falling in the forest, and the FBI never calls. And so that's a really good result. It is key there that we separate a packet capture that we keep on customer premise and the metadata that we use for the application of analytics. And it's because in that packet capture, there could be health records, financial transactions, personally identifiable information, all kinds of things that we don't want to see, regulators don't want us to see, and that you don't want us to see. But we need that ability to do that 100% confirmation of what happened here. So in this way, we have thought this through and built a platform that is specifically designed for highly regulated organizations. And honestly, with the increasing trend towards consumer privacy, this is going to be something that will be table stakes by everybody that does what we do. Everybody is going to really have to respect the fact that privacy data, regulated data, criminal justice data. I mean, just there's all kinds of things that are too toxic to touch. So that's the only commercial I want to give you right there. That's what we do. So, okay, so trends obviously point towards user credential misbehavior more than malware. And when people do trip over malware, it's pretty commodity stuff, right? I mean, like really the stuff that your detection capabilities should be able to identify. But instead, everybody's out shopping for AI. Why is that? I think it's because cyber. Okay, so let's talk about that. So here are a couple of really interesting. This first headline here is from a legal publication. 40% of AI startups don't use AI. There was I read another one where machine learning was actually a room full of people in a building in India writing signatures. That was machine learning. And I love this Grant Thornton quote here. Marketing puffery. Okay, so going back to my original premise, venture capital firms smell blood in the water. And here's the result of 3 dudes with a PowerPoint going to a VC going, hey, we got some magic here, invest in us. And it doesn't stop there. AI claims need a lot of human guidance. Let's just cut to the chase here. If you have bought artificial intelligence technology or some of the orchestration and automation platforms, you have to throw so many human resource hours at those to get them to work and to manage them that if your intent was to control your human resource cost, you have achieved an outcome that is exactly the opposite of the one you intended. And I just, the irony there is not lost on me. So really, think about the way the world really works today. What's really the bad things happening, right? Are you going to end up being targeted by a nation state, or are your users tripping over the background noise of the internet and having their credentials stuffed, right? Remember that many organizations could not comply with their own regulatory requirements after it's been discovered that they had a security problem. Are you doing all that required stuff? Are you really training your users like you should, because your users are really your biggest exposure? Are you providing oversight over the technology procurement process so that you don't end up buying crap and you're starting to hold vendors to a standard? Right? We're not gonna make it a requirement, but hey, if you give us a third-party test report for your product, we're gonna score you higher on this competitive procurement. That's the kind of language that starts to help turn that corner. So just about everybody has bought down that likelihood of a bad outcome, and you got lots of preventive controls. It's time to focus on minimizing that impact with your detection and response. And this is, having just come recently from the Gartner Security and Risk Management Summit, this was a big topic of conversation there. It's how everybody is understanding now buying more stuff to make bad things not happen is not working for us. If you focus on that impact, response, and recovery, you turn everything that's happening, and these are foreseeable events now. And I use that term foreseeable because it is a specific legal term. There is something in the legal business called a standard of foreseeability. And if you as an executive fail to take steps to mitigate a foreseeable risk, turns out you can be guilty of gross negligence. And this is the kind of language now that's getting thrown around. So focus on minimizing the impact of foreseeable events is a real good way to go about this. Or you can double down, go buy some AI, cross your fingers. Okay, so we have a few minutes, about 15 minutes left over for Q&A. If anyone's got some Q&A, I think, Sam, are you going to moderate Q&A? How's that working? Let me see if I can find the chat stuff here.
No one has entered in a question, but we can open it up. If anyone has anything, you can just ask Mike or myself.
I invite heckling, by the way. Go ahead. Come on,
Well,
there's got to be somebody out there that says, "Oh, you just burst my AI bubble. We were just shopping for AI because we believe it's magic." Go ahead, man.
I was actually going to say that I thought that this was a very interesting presentation.
Well, thank you.
Good information in there.
Yes, you know, after being in the business this long and seeing the things that I have seen, if nobody asks me questions, I'm gonna tell stories because I have great stories. You know, it's focusing on really. I mean, I've been in all parts of this business, including the entrepreneur part of this business. So when I say three dudes with a PowerPoint, you know, that's dangerously close to the actual truth there. You know, really. I think a realist about the hyperbole that exists in this business. That said, there are real things that happen, and so I'll tell you a quick story. So I was at the city of Seattle, and that was approximately 10,000 users, maybe a little bit more, and 30 agencies and Health and Human Services or Department of Human Services and health records and criminal justice information in the police department, and Treasury takes all kinds of credit cards, and we were a level 1 PCI merchant, and it was really a lot of things. But we also had an energy utility. So Seattle City Light is one of the largest munis. And one day we get some email coming in, and we stopped it, right? Because we had plenty of preventive controls in place. But we always look at things that get stopped and try to determine who's the actor behind here. Are we being targeted? So these were a bunch of fake intelligence briefs, and they were booby-trapped. And so, okay, let's look at who they were addressed to. Wow, it's a lot of people in Seattle City Light. So I went to the CIO of Seattle City Light and said, what can you tell me about these people? And he came back and said, most of these are power marketers. So a power marketer is the person that negotiates trades of energy over the electric grid. So here in the Pacific Northwest, our power comes from hydro, it's dams. And so let's say we didn't get enough snow in the wintertime and the rivers are running dry and we can't make hydropower. That means we got to buy it from Southern California. That means they have to price it. Bonneville's got to open up the transmission lines and all this stuff's got to get negotiated. Okay. So power marketers, we stared at this a little harder and saw that one of the addresses used for the supervisor of the power marketers was not his email address. It was his instant message address that he had requested to be aliased to his email address. So how do bad guys know the instant message address of the supervisor of the power marketers? And what the hell is this instant message address anyway? And digging a little further, we find out that trades of energy over the electric grid have been negotiated over AOL Instant Messenger. I'm not making this up. Okay, how does bad guy know the instant message address of AOL Instant Messenger used to negotiate trades of energy over the grid? And we thought, and we thought, and we thought, and then it hit us. Back in 2009, 2010, China hacked Google, and this was a big story then. And Google makes their own power, and Google has power marketers. When China hacked Google, they lifted all the information for the West Coast power marketers that were trading energy over the grid using AOL Instant Messenger and started to methodically go into all of these organizations and get a toehold in there. We stopped them, and we shared that information with Fusion Center and federal law enforcement, and they were able to go out and talk to all of the other West Coast power marketers in the different energy utilities. And AOL Instant Messenger is no longer used to negotiate trades of energy over the grid. So there's a story. That's like the real deal story.
We're using Yahoo now, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're using Google Voice for it now.
So, you know, you guys sound like you've got your act together, to put it mildly. But just like, you know, you said early on, you've got to assume that you've already been breached, right?
Yep.
So
I mean, that's just a good way to go about your day. Good thing to think when you wake up.
yeah, I mean, it sounds fantastic. So are you guys 100% sure that you're going to find every vulnerability, if you will? I've got some code floating around that'll activate when my Chinese overlord tells me to.
So no, it would be impossible to guarantee that. And it is, and frankly, so our particular service is integrates with all of those other controls that you have in place. So whatever you have that makes a security-like message, we will ingest that, combine it with everything else, and make sense out of it, and allow our investigators, access to things like logs so that they can get context around events. But I mean, there could be something that could have been hidden in your network for 2 years waiting to wake up. Now, when it does wake up, it's got to talk. And it's got to talk to a destination that may be in another country, which makes it hit the radar. But it may be talking to a compromised asset in this country, which means it doesn't hit the radar. So it's really looking at behavioral characteristics and looking at things that have never happened before as an indicator. It turns out that things that happen very infrequently turn out to be more analytically important than things that happen frequently. So there's a variety of ways that we look at your network, right? Statistical aberrations, frequency-based. If we see something that's strongly periodic, absolutely signature-based, right? And intrusion detection works like antivirus. Really, it's signature-based, and a bunch of other analytics. That's how we turned 5 million events into 20 tickets. But no, we would never guarantee that we will see absolutely everything that's ever happened and prevent those things. This is all about managing impact and agreeing that stuff is going to happen. The prevention, that's on you. We'll take on detection and response and make sure that when something gets through your prevention, we put out that little fire before the house burns down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
I just have a quick question. How do you just go about your processes with regards to the risks, vulnerabilities, and threats based on a business organization? Like, how do you define that?
Sure.
Is that defined through the business, or do you have any sort of preconceptual, standards that you go by?
Yeah, that's actually a terrific question. Thank you for asking that. So part of our company does security consulting, and the way that we go about this, and the way that I go about it as the information security officer here at CI, the federal government put together something called the NIST cybersecurity framework. And it is just like every other regulatory and standard of practice. So HIPAA, PCI, Criminal Justice Information Standard, NIST 800-53, the ISO standard. One is a taco, one's a burrito, and one's a tostada. The ingredients are the same. The packaging is a little different, okay? So there's all of these to choose from. Some of these you're compelled to use because if you take credit cards, you got to use the PCI data security standard. Any organization can use the NIST cybersecurity framework, and here's why it is a good choice. It's outcome-based. It's not prescriptive. NIST 800-53 is entirely prescriptive, and you should never even pick it up and never try to read it unless you are a federal agency, because that's the only circumstance under which you're going to be required to do that. But the NIST framework says, and let me just give you an example. Here's one of the outcomes that you need to meet. Remote access by third parties is managed. It doesn't say how to do it. However you do that is up to you. But what it lets you do is go through this. It's not even that long. You could probably go through it and self-assess in a while. But what we've done is modified that so that, and you're free to do this too. So what the NIST framework about is you want to align with the framework. You want to have all those practices, processes in place. The ability to put those things in place is great. Treating it as risk is better. So let's say that we don't have, let's say remote access by third parties is not managed, okay? So what is the likelihood that records could be disclosed, money could be stolen, or services could be disrupted as a result of not managing remote access by third parties. Okay, it's probably medium. Okay, just pick high, medium, low. And then what would the impact of that be? Well, it's potentially very high, right? Because we know how many records we have out there. We know how critical our services are and what would happen to the company if they stopped operating, right? So now you have medium times high. What's kind of medium high? And that's, I mean, that is really as complex as it needs to be. So once you've gone through there, you've aligned yourself with that framework, you know what your corrective actions are, and you know what they are in terms of risk. So I would encourage, if you want to dip your toe in the water, just get yourself a copy of the NIST framework. Ask me, I'll send you one. If you're coming to the breakfast on August 20th, I'll have it with me. But it's not real hard to do. And the corollary benefit there is it gives you the ability to show your security papers to business partners, to consumers, to regulators, to everybody, right? Yes, we have assessed ourselves against this framework. We know exactly what our corrective action plan is, and we've prioritized those activities and budgeted them for the next 3 years. That is a really, really good phrase to come out of anybody's mouth. And so thank you for asking that question. That would be my advice on how to handle that. And I see we got 4 more minutes or so. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and return everybody a few minutes of their day. Sam, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah.
Hey, was there something that you were going to give us an email or other address for that?
Oh, for the news blast?
That's it.
You're looking right at it. See under my name?
Yep.
That's it.
At Detect Respond.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
See where it says sign up for the IT Security News Blast, and there's a URL there. And if you hit that URL, you'll go to a link, and all you got to do is put in your email address, and you'll start getting this every morning at 5:15 a.m. Pacific time.
Got it. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks.
And I hope to see you all on August 20th.
All right.
Yes. So we will have a free breakfast and meet and greet with both Mike and Ash. I promise Ash will be there. And it's a great opportunity if you're in the New York area. And then I will also be sending out a follow-up email with all of the information that we discussed today. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Mike, Ash, or myself. And thank you again for attending.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.